Guys, another thing that we heard out of the spring meetings that was official since the last time we all gathered was the 8-game SEC schedule in 2024. Georgia will play, and every SEC school will play 8 SEC opponents, and they'll play 1 Power 5 opponent from a different conference. I think we know who Georgia's will be.
Georgia's got 2 that year.
Georgia Tech. And they will also have
Clemson in the opener.
Clemson, that's right. Is that one in Atlanta?
Yep.
Wow. What a tough year that'll be. Someone posed this on our board, and there isn't any rhyme or reason to this. I don't know if y'all have an inside scoop on who Georgia will play, but I want to make a record here on June 4th, 2023, who y'all think Georgia's 8 opponents will be. And I'll go ahead and start. If y'all want to kind of get yours together, I will tell you who I thought Georgia was going to play. And I think while everyone is freaking out about Auburn getting off the schedule, I still think Georgia will play Auburn. I think the SEC won't want to totally shake things up, so they'll keep Georgia and Auburn, the Deep South's oldest rivalry, on the board. I also think Florida, I think we can all assume the Gators will still be on the schedule. That one's safe to say. A&M is one that everyone is really wringing their wrists and hands over because they want to see Georgia play A&M. It's only happened once. It was in Sanford Stadium, and Georgia is due for a trip to College Station. I agree with that. So I think Florida, Auburn, A&M, and I think Georgia and Texas. I think Georgia could have 2 Lone Star State teams. That might seem a little tough, but someone else brought up the point on our board that Bama has already played Texas, and maybe Georgia-Texas could be one of those marquee matchups to start the season and get Georgia back locking horns with Bevo again. Just watch out for your tail, Uga. I also think Kentucky, South Carolina, Tennessee, and Vandy will stay on the schedule as those holdover traditional SEC East matchups because, like I believe, the SEC won't want to shake things up too much as they totally dissolve the divisions. Who do y'all think will be on Georgia's 2024 schedule if you had to lock anybody in right now?
I agree. I think I agree with everything you just said, except for maybe Texas.
And I know that's aggressive.
And I think the reason for that is I think that the SEC probably would like to get Oklahoma, Georgia back on the schedule, considering it was already set. And to me, that feels like their opportunity to do so. I mean, for all the hell Georgia's caught this year for losing Oklahoma off the schedule, I think that that's one they'll try to get around to sooner rather than later. But I agree with you totally on Texas A&M. That's one that feels like it's just like you were just wondering, is this ever going to happen again?
Yeah. Here's the reason that I don't think that one happens. Because I'm with you, Roos. I do think Georgia plays Oklahoma, and I think they play at Oklahoma in that 2024 season. I have a really, really hard time seeing the SEC sending to me, I think that they will play those teams. There's 4 teams that I think are really kind of a haul geographically, and it's Oklahoma, Texas, Texas A&M, and LSU. Those are the 4 most westernmost teams in the conference, and so I think that they're going to try to eliminate teams having to make 2 of those trips in 1 year. So I've got them going to Oklahoma. I completely agree with you there, Wes. I do think that they're going to keep Auburn, Florida, Kentucky on the schedule. Those are rumored to be Georgia's 3, permanent opponents if they were to go to a 9-game schedule. I think in order to keep with the possibility of going to a 9-game schedule in 2025 out there, I think that they'll probably want to keep those opponents on that schedule so that it becomes – that it still is a yearly ordeal. So I've got Georgia playing. Keep in mind, the Jacksonville game counts as a home game in 2024. So that eats up one availability at Sanford Stadium. I've got them having Auburn in Athens. I've got them having Vanderbilt in Athens, and I've got LSU making the trip to Athens. Like I said, I think that they're going to take those 4 Western teams and try to keep the trips at a minimum. So I think that Georgia would make one trip to those 4 teams each year, play 2 of them, but they get one of them at home. So that's LSU. So I've got the 4 home games being Auburn, Florida, like I said, counts as a home game, LSU, Vanderbilt on the road. I've already mentioned Kentucky and Oklahoma. And then I think that they get Arkansas and South Carolina.
Okay, so no Tennessee?
No Tennessee. It pains me as somebody that's from the Volunteer State, has heard a lot of Tennessee, Georgia talk over the years. No Tennessee.
So you think no Tennessee, no Kentucky?
No, I've got Kentucky on there.
All right, so you got Florida. Do you have A&M?
No, I do not.
No A&M. All right.
Oklahoma.
Rusty, you got any guesses?
Man, y'all making my head hurt. Talking about Clemson, Texas A&M, maybe at Oklahoma. I'm like, do what? Who? It's like that. Chris Tucker in that movie. Who just kicked me? Like, what? What are y'all talking about here? I'm guessing. To be honest with you, don't really know. But if you start talking about Georgia's playing Clemson in 2024 to open, and then they could potentially go to Texas A&M, maybe Texas or Oklahoma, along with that schedule. Look, it is what it is when Texas and Oklahoma comes in the league. You're adding 2 superpowers, I would consider, major programs. So it's not going to be easy, but I'm not sure that they're going to pound Georgia that much, because Georgia tried to go to Oklahoma this year. I mean, it was their turn to do that, and they took it away from them. So we'll see what happens with that, but as soon as possible. So I think maybe that Texas A&M game would probably one I would feel confident leaning that'll probably on that 2024 schedule somewhere.
See, to me, I think it's kind of at this point. I like to believe that it's a bit by the SEC, and that they'll keep that game out. They'll keep Georgia away from College Station for as long as possible.
They're going to commit to the bit. No one's going to say anything about Georgia's 2024 schedule like they are about Georgia's 2023 schedule. That's for sure. Yeah, and when you look at that Clemson game, that's nuts. Now, how does Bama keep Texas on the schedule when Georgia lost Oklahoma?
Because they'll have wrapped up the home and home
by
the time that they come, because they played in 2022 in Austin. The return trip is set for 2023. Georgia's was a 2023 and then a 2031, I believe, was the back end of that deal. So yeah, by the time that they were going to make the return trip to Athens, Oklahoma was supposed to be an SEC member. So that's why that got nixed. And I believe Oklahoma was also supposed to play a 2024-25 series against Tennessee. So that could be one that they try to still work in there.
It's well, what's weird to me about that is, why wouldn't they just, knowing Oklahoma was coming in, why wouldn't they just go ahead and just do it then?
Do it when?
Well, like let them play this year, and then in 24 they come to Athens.
Because then it's a conference game instead of a non-conference deal.
I guess that makes sense. Sort of.
Because if you schedule it as
there's a lot of overthinking in some of this.
Well, if you
just let them play.
If it gets scheduled in 2024 as a conference game with Oklahoma coming to Athens, that means that there has to be a return trip of Georgia to Norman as a conference opponent. So that's why the 23 year wouldn't work.
Oh, well, to me, then I think that's why Oklahoma makes sense.
I wish that they would have played it as a neutral site game, but I think that just in listening to what Josh and Jerry, my 2 buddies, had to say about
I don't know why that cracks me up to hear you just refer to them by their first names, but it's funny.
But to hear them talk about it, they went through just about every option. I mean, you can read what the Oklahoma AD had to say. They went through every option possible, just with the quick turnaround of it, it's why Georgia ended up getting Ball State, somebody that's not a marquee opponent. In fact, Georgia makes more money with a neutral site guarantee game than they do a home game. So it's not necessarily about the money for Georgia to, it's not advantageous for them to do that as a home game.
Because there's incentives, there's travel incentives, there's another funny thing that just cracked me up looking at Palmer. His head is kind of positioned right where the field goal holder is right now. It's going to crack me up.